Games are fun. They're also challenging, rewarding, thought-provoking. As I've come to play more and more interesting and unique games, I find myself more often falling in love with fresh faces as much as I endearingly reminisce on the ones that made my childhood. For every time I unharmoniously annoy the people around me by talking about Kingdom Hearts, there's a new game that I've never touched before that as quickly as I found out about it, managed to entangle its way so deep into my psyche that I talk about it just as much. One such game is ICO. By the creators of the much-acclaimed Shadow of the Colossus, ICO is a game that rarely finds itself in the spotlight. Released before Shadow of the Colossus on September 25th, 2001 in North America and December 6th, 2001 in Japan, ICO is most easily described as a puzzle platformer. The thing is, a genre description or synopsis is not the kind of thing that can sell a game like ICO. It's a title with way too much stuff going on. Think about your favorite game, or movie, or book, something that you hold especially near to your heart. Could a short, objective paragraph showcase all that self-contained love? Why is it that you like this thing so much? Maybe it's just a great example of one of the shorthands I said before, fun or thought-provoking. Or maybe it's the little things. Minor interactions between two characters, a scene that is so empty it feels full, a light breeze that seems to wave gently through passing cloth. The more you learn to love something, the more those little things shine through. ICO is a game about those little things. It's also about that love. In a year that had Final Fantasy X, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Silent Hill 2, ICO stands out as a remarkably subdued game. Subdued in both presentation and storytelling. Before even officially starting the game, an opening cutscene plays with no dialogue, no music, just ambiance. It ends with the camera slowly and methodically turning toward a blindingly bright castle before giving us the title. ICO. Questions upon questions asked, to whom answers shall not be given. What is ICO? Is it the name of the castle? The main character? What was with the people on those horses? What about that boy? If you've already played ICO before, you might already have come up with answers to these questions. If you haven't, don't expect any either. The real opening of the game has a boy with horns being dragged away into the castle, guided by masked and similarly horned figures. Using the power of a mysterious sword to open the path, the boy is dragged upward into the castle until we come to a room full of what can only be described as coffins. The sheer number of them dwarfs the room in an unpleasant tone. Here is where the boy is to be confined. It's also the first we get a semblance of story directly told to us. This boy was taken here by the will of the village. And with that, the figures leave, never to be seen again. After some time, the boy ends up getting thrown out of his coffin, slammed into the ground, and sent into a dream. That dream, or maybe a nightmare, has him spotting a shadowy figure coming out of a dark and mysterious goop, before he gets pulled into something similar. The horned boy wakes up, and now we play the game. Really? That's all of the setup before being set into an impromptu tutorial. There's no heads-up display, no marker telling you where to go. The camera isn't even really in your control. Somehow, someway, you control this boy and know so little. Maybe as much as he does. ICO's control scheme is bare bones. You can jump with triangle, interact with circle, attack with square, and move around with the left stick. The player's movement is always based on the camera's perspective, which, as I said, the player does not control. It'd be more accurate to say that the camera is simply observing the player in the environment. It's directed, choreographed, to show the player something specific in a specific way. The player flips a switch and is then promptly shown the door that they just opened, an empty space with nothing but a metal chain. There is reason behind the camera, the player just needs to listen to it. After traversing through a few odd rooms, the player climbs up and up this spiraling staircase until they end up where the dream took place. The cage hosts a glowing bright figure that contrasts the nightmarish shadow from before. I think it's here where the dialogue is at its most apparent. The boy is not speaking a real language. We know what he's saying, but the words themselves may sound like gibberish, though if you listen closely, it's more like a mix of an abundance of languages. It sounds like language, we just don't know it ourselves. It's great! It's as grounding as it is surreal. Fictional languages always have this effect where, by the nature of it being a language, you can learn it, understand how it functions, what it means. And you can certainly do that in ICO as well. I mean, the meaning is right there. Though, by knowing what's being said, you miss the misunderstanding, which I find to be part of the beauty. We send the cage down to the bottom of the tower, climb back down, and unceremoniously break it open with the grace of a bumbling buffoon. And it's this cutscene that solidifies what I'm talking about. This otherworldly bright white girl comes out from the cage and begins to talk to the boy in a language we cannot understand. At all! Both you, the player, and the boy have no idea what she's saying. The subtitles are in a sort of runic alphabet. Combined with the fictional language being spoken, there's no way to decipher the meaning. And it's this inability to comprehend the actions, the thoughts of this girl, that we first get a real taste of empathy. Empathy for our protagonist. Then, without warning, a shadowy presence emerges from the ground and tries to take the girl. Oh no! Grabbing the stick that dropped from above, we smack the shadow's hands off this girl until he disappears. She sits uncomfortably on the ground, unmoving. The only way to proceed is to take her hand and pick her up off the ground. This, right here. This is the moment that defines ICO. This one action is what truly begins your journey through the game, connects you to the world and characters, and shapes your experience. This is the R1 button on my controller. This is the Yorda button. You both may not understand each other right now, but that's okay, because actions speak louder than words. By holding the R1 button on the controller while next to Yorda, you take hold of her hand and pull her along behind you. Yorda isn't as strong or capable as you, so your goal is, as the boy says, to get her out of here. Bringing her to the mythical blocks behind her cage, she powerfully activates them, getting them out of your way. Interesting. Kinda like that sword from the beginning. From here, you learn more about how this button works. When far away from Yorda, pressing the R1 button will have the player shout toward her to come over. And by holding the button on a ledge, you can help pull her up and onto the platform leading out of the room. On the outside, a couch next to a lengthy bridge. Stand long enough and Yorda will point to the couch and say... something. What is she trying to say? You can't exactly understand what she's saying, but by following her nigh unintelligible instructions, we sit down on the couch. Eventually, so does Yorda. And then, it plays. This is the save theme, Heal. ICO doesn't have that many songs. You'll notice this quite quickly as you play. Most areas simply don't have any music, opting for a rich and quiet ambient soundscape to fill the background of the game. Instead, it reserves the music for important moments only, the most important of which is this. The serene comfort and safety that comes only once you've finally decided to sit down and take a rest. Heal's raindrop-like tune and consistently cheery melody evoke a kind of peace that, while temporary, is warm. At this moment, right here, you can breathe. Most importantly, it's not just you. It's also Yorda. Remember, both the player and Yorda have to sit on the couch to prompt the save menu. If, just like you, Yorda isn't able to sit down and rest, then really, how can you? This is one of the many tricks the game employs that can easily be taken for granted. Tricks all designed to get you to care. ICO is full of these unspoken moments, crafted in such a way as to get the player to care about Yorda as much as possible. This wraps back around to the R1 button, where the act of holding down the button will, yes, have the boy shout towards Yorda, but will also focus the camera onto Yorda herself. It will follow her movement as she runs towards you until eventually she either ends up in your hands yet again, or if something prevents such, gets you to know why. Holding her hand is as much of a game mechanic as it is a plot point, one that you actively participate in and live out in real time. This culminates in the occurrences of combat throughout ICO, where the player must protect Yorda from the shadows, utilizing the button to the fullest extent by keeping her close, or allowing you to see where she is being taken if you are unsuccessful at it. Most potent are the anxiety-inducing moments of Yorda being taken into an abyss in the ground, where the player will yet again utilize their ability to take hold of Yorda to pull her out before it is too late. Just these sections of combat and the many different ways the player will interact with this single button are a simulacrum of the wider game at large. No matter how safe the player is, if Yorda isn't safe, there is a problem. So, of course both Yorda and the player must rest together to save the game. The mechanical design facilitates and builds that relationship and empathy within the player. Yet even still, there's more to it than that. I've been going on about the actions the player takes that build up their empathy toward Yorda, but what about the other way around? Yorda is, after all, the most important character in the game besides the player. Quite impressively, that level of reverence towards the character is tangible with Yorda's AI. It's fairly simple, but Yorda does react to the player's actions and even participates alongside the player in gameplay situations. There are 3 specific examples of Yorda's AI that I believe best showcase what I mean, though importantly, these aren't the only examples that display Yorda's personality. First, if a player finds themselves struggling with a puzzle, Yorda will helpfully point and exclaim what they should do. Of course, like always, we can't understand what she is saying, but the important thing to note is that she is trying to help the player. This only occurs after the player has spent a certain amount of time trying to solve a puzzle unsuccessfully. This is good as, while the puzzles in ICO aren't particularly tricky, it's good to have time to think quietly and come to the right solution. Even in the case where the player finds themselves stumped enough to get hints, the hints are still obfuscated by the language barrier, allowing the player to still feel smart when they solve the puzzle. The second example of Yorda expressing herself is when left alone around birds, where she will curiously try to interact with them, looking at them from afar, running up to them, watching them fly off, and trying to chase as well. It's remarkably fascinating, as it's a piece of the AI that the player doesn't influence in any way. There are quite a few examples of this kind of behavior in the game, but this one sticks out the most as it's just so damn cute. And finally, my last example is Yorda's behavior after sitting on the couch. After saving the game, but before getting up to continue the journey, the player can idly relax with Yorda, taking in the pleasant soundscapes and environments the game has to offer. If you idle for long enough, the horned boy will end up falling asleep on the couch, while Yorda will continue to look around and back at the boy for some time. If the player continues to idle for far longer, however... Ah! My heart! I kid you not. The first time I saw this, tears burst out of my eyes like I was a shonen protagonist. For me, this was the moment I completely fell in love with these characters, and it's all simply through actions and animations. Now, this is where I have to admit something, dear viewer. I must apologize because I used Yorda's name before it was ever told to us through the story. Just like the Horn Boy, you have no clue what this girl's name is until it is revealed naturally through the story. It isn't far in, maybe a third or even a quarter of the way through, but it does mean that in these early portions of the game, you, a nameless character, are building up these feelings toward a character who, at the time, currently has no name. I make a point of this because I believe it is deeply important to how the game ends up shaping your feelings. You first come to care for this girl only because she was trapped and in danger. You spend the early game slowly meandering through this large and quietly foreboding castle without so much as a hint of who these characters are except sparsely shown through gameplay. The player ends up caring about the girl partly because they are asked to, and then everything else is built from experience. Take, for example, a very common moment within playing ICO. A gap that is easily crossable by the player, but not so for Yorda. Each and every time a player comes to a gap like this, they will cross with ease and without difficulty, but they must bring Yorda with them. So, we call to her and ready our hand, watch as she hesitantly prepares to jump, goes for it, and help claw her up to safety on the other side. This interaction is deliberate. Every motion, movement, and action helps build up how you feel and understand this character. The player does this several times among other interactions like combat, saving, etc., all before ever learning the girl's name. By the time you have been told Yorda's name through one of the very few cutscenes, the game has already conditioned you to care. Now, you have someone specific to care about. The name has importance. It's withheld on purpose, and with confidence. It's also the only character ever named in-game. Even the player character is never referred to in any way outside of boy. There's both a level of restraint and a dignified beauty in having a nameless protagonist that the player can embody. The character, through having no defined name, can become a vessel for the player to interact with and experience the world at large. In truth, however, this is only the case if you interact simply with the game and nothing else. Going onto the internet or opening up the manual that came with the game reveals the truth, that the boy does have a name. ICO. So, I may or may not have lied when I said that there would be no answers, but I still feel rightfully justified in my words because when I played the game, I didn't know the boy's name. And never knowing his name ended up completely impacting how I perceived the characters, the world, and the game as a whole. Most importantly, it gave me a unique perspective on the work that is ICO. In my experience, not a single place, character, or thing is named except Yorda specifically to heighten the player's attachment to her. Every piece of the whole hinges on this one girl and the player's built desire to keep her safe. The player is simply the player, an outsider who found themselves in this castle in the mist, lost so deeply without any kind of proper noun to grasp onto. Nothing outside of the title, of course. Until you find her, the one who quite literally defines the journey that the player takes until the very end. The reason I dig into this point so deeply is to try and crystallize this power of perspective. How I perceived and processed the world of ICO came from my perspective, as potentially narrow and blind as it may have been. Yet it was that same perspective that ultimately imposed upon me the heartfelt adoration I now hold for the game. I've been going over it this whole time, little detail by detail. Each minute piece of the game's design ending up a token of appreciation that I carry with me, all stemming from the way I initially saw and explored this dilapidated castle. After the credits had rolled, the moment-to-moment gameplay was not what I thought of, but instead those fleeting comforts when I listened to the wind somberly shudder while I sat next to a girl I couldn't understand yet cared for as much as a friend. It wasn't me playing out my role as the main character, undertaking the story as an observer. No, I was there. Not a boy named ICO, but me. My first playthrough of ICO may have been just shy of 6 hours, yet the amount of time I've since spent wandering that forlorn castle in my mind is immeasurable. In that time, I've drawn my own very basic understanding of what I believe the story is and what's being said. Simply put, the most potent tale of platonic love I've found in a story. Through utilizing the artistry of mechanics, we too can find it in our hearts to love and care for another, even if we have never known them before. We may have never met until this very moment, yet the compassion and empathy I feel are real. Your struggles matter, and when we find ourselves inexplicably torn apart, I languish in sorrow over the loss of time we could have shared. Distance may keep us apart, though our bond never quite severed. When we finally meet again, we may find ourselves different people than we once were, our paths splitting from us our believed intertwined fates. But even with the world crashing down, the lives we lead so different from what we were, still you reach out your hand to give me that push. You care, even though you never needed to. And when we can finally meet again, devoid of the struggles and strife that chain us, then too will I reach out my hand as I did those many moons ago. Then too will I lead you to a loving embrace. I love you, my friend. Thank you for being with me, through thick and thin, living your life alongside mine. ICO is about that love. To me, at least. To you, ICO might mean something entirely different. The walls of that winding castle may speak to you in a way that I can't hear. Do the horns on the boy represent something indiscernible to me? What about the dream versus reality of the cage containing Yorda? While I may not have any noteworthy conclusions to offer up on a silver platter for these questions, instead I give you the chance to tell me the answer. What does ICO mean to you? The fun thing about engaging with art is that not all of us will have quite the same answer. Our own lived experiences determine what each piece means to us. Is the challenge emblematic of a struggle with depression? Is the cyclical nature of the game representing the struggles of writing and how our writing affects ourselves? Is the ending of Metal Gear Solid 2 secretly a trans allegory? The director of ICO, Fumito Ueda, said in an interview that the ending of the game is all a dream from the boy's perspective. Yet, in that same interview, moments later, he states, "Well, that's one possible interpretation." Forget your preconceived notions about what the art is supposed to mean, and simply let it mean what it means to you. Let your influence loose on the art. Let the art influence you back. There is no one true interpretation of a piece of art. The feelings you have are real and more important than any pompous video essayist can tell you otherwise. Your experience is yours. No one can take that away from you. And really, how could they? They don't know what you've been through. After all, you were there. All of that, and somehow I didn't manage to mention New Game Plus and how that reframes our experience with the game. Hey, there was a lot more that I wanted to say about ICO, but didn't end up getting to in the scope of this video. I didn't even end up giving any sort of objective marker of how good it was. Most unfortunately, I never did end up talking about Peter Elliott's GameFAQs plot and story guide. Perhaps a story for another time. Like on Patreon! If you have any interest in supporting me in my videos while getting early access peeks into what I make, that's where to go. Thanks to those who already support me, including Nyx, Hero, and Ori Boros. Till next time.